Alright, what's up everybody? We are back with another Brutally Honest PUBG. For this one, we're going to jump right in pretty heavy. We're going to go after the worst players on your favorite teams. So we're going to go through a list of teams, mostly North American. We're going to throw in some EU. But yeah, we're going to go through what I think is the least valuable or the worst players on your favorite teams. That doesn't make them bad, it just makes them the worst. Somebody's got to be the worst. Somebody's got to be last. Doesn't matter if you're fucking an all-star. If you're on that team, somebody's got to be the worst. So yeah, that's what we're gonna run through, and I'm sure it's gonna make a bunch of people in North America love to vote for me for Nations Cup. So I'm sure this is gonna be a great time and completely not blow up in my face. So let's jump right into it. Let's start off hot right away with the Sonics. Uh, for the Sonics, this one was tough for me to be honest, because everybody on this team I hugely respect. Shrimsy and Tig, I think obviously you put them away, and I think those are the two best players on the team. And then it becomes between Mime and Hwin. And I've said some things about Mime in the past, but if you've noticed anything I've ever said about Mime, I've never said anything poorly about his in-game play. I used to talk shit about him early, but that was just because he hadn't done anything yet. Um, Either way, huge respect for Mime as a player. He says some of the dumbest things a person can speak about, but his outlook towards the game, how he plays in game, nothing but respect. With that being said, I think he's less valuable to the team than Hwin. So for this first one, I'm going to go with Mime. I think Mime is the worst player on the Sonics, and I think he is the most replaceable. Obviously, they didn't try it, but they were forced to do it in one of the former ESL events with Zampa. I don't think that went well. Well, it didn't go awful, but yeah, I think he's the most replaceable player on the team probably. Um, yeah, it's not much more to it than that because they're all fucking nuts on that team. But Mime is probably the worst or the least valuable player. All right, so that was it for Sonic. So let's keep running through it. We're gonna go ahead with E United now. Now E United's a rough one. Again, it's so hard to pick the worst player on these teams because they're so fucking stacked. I think Kick is arguably one of the better players in NA right now, so it's hard to pick him. Relo, I think, is too well rounded and has a lot of value as an IGL. Even though we know Kick does a lot of calling as well, especially in like fights and stuff like that. So it's basically between Flood and Snakers. And to be honest, I know Snakers still puts up numbers, but I feel like it's Snakers for some reason. Like normally I'd want to go Flood out of Snakers for the worst, but I just feel like Snakers is the worst right now. I feel like he's the most replaceable. And for some reason, when I picture that team now, Snakers seems to just gel the least in my head. So I'm sure you're watching Snakers, but you're probably the least valuable on that team right now, and arguably the worst player on that team, which is hard to say because everybody's fucking nuts. But I'm sure you're gonna be tilted. Happy birthday, by the way. I'm recording this on your birthday, so happy birthday, Snakers. But you're the worst player on your team now. All right, jumping into the next one. Still sticking to North America, we have the Gas Cans. Again, this is based on value to the team, overall player ability, things like that. Now, Gas Cans is pretty strong roster. We have Adam, Nikos, Greg, and Wakikamukau. Now, surprisingly enough, I think Greg has a lot of value. Nikos has been fragging out lately a lot, and I think Adam's outlook on the game is insanely good. So surprising to me, even I think Wakikamukau has been the least impressive coming over to NA so far, being on that team. I think right now he's the most replaceable and the worst performing player on that team. Don't mean stat wise. I'm not sure what the stats look like because I honestly am just doing it based off of my opinion. But Cal's probably the most replaceable on that team, even though he just joined and they've been looking better with him. I think Gas in general has just been on the upward trend, and they still have a lot of work to do. So looking forward to that, but I think Cal's the worst right now. All right, let's jump into the next one. We have BBB, Bing Bang Boom, and the lads, Keenan, Oldless, Roth, and Sharp. This they've been playing really well recently, to be honest. One of the probably the second most consistent team in terms of just how the games are kind of unfolding behind United. More consistent than us, in my opinion, even though they didn't finish above us in the last event. They've been more consistent. It seems like in game from when I watch them. The Bing Bang Boom's a rough one. I think Oldest is really good, and I think Keenan is also really good. The other boys are, they're solid for sure. Sharp and Roth. I think Oldest and Keenan are better than the other two right now. So it's rough. Uh, I think Roth's value as an IGL and a leader is just gonna overpower Sharp's value, and I think Sharp is probably the most replaceable right now. I haven't seen Sharp have those sharp shot moments that we used to know and love. He hasn't been awful or bad in any ways, but he hasn't been, fucking world dominator confident Sharp that I'm used to seeing. So with that being said, I'm gonna have to say Sharp's probably the worst one recently, but I like Sharp. I think he can easily be one of the best players. Just haven't seen it too much recently. Sorry, Sharp. All right, we're gonna jump into Yahoo. Yahoo's a rough one, because it's another fucking. These top teams are so hard to decipher the worst players because they're so stacked. So Yahoo's Sparking, Shin, Poon, and Bale. Um, I think Bale's arguably the best player, but I've always really liked Shin and his ceiling. That's always been a really good thing for me. I think Sparking gets a land buff insanely. I love to see Sparking play on lane. He's just a fucking lanimal. I know Poon is IGLing now, and we only seen one event out of him. So I'm actually gonna go with Poon. Poonage is the worst player on Yahoo right now. Um, well, let's see if he can hold up that value as an IGL and get consistent. But for right now, I think Poon's the worst player on Yahoo for sure. Let's jump into another one for the Americas or NA. We have the Rumblers. Rumblers haven't been too consistent. They've been kind of wishy-washy, not that great, to be honest. Rumblers are Los, Waldo, Valiate, and Corsac. This is a tough one because honestly, nobody on the roster is overly great. I think Los has been kind of the carry recently, which, I mean, what is new? Los has always kind of somehow put up numbers. He, in my opinion, single-handedly got them into PCS 6 with his performance in Last Chance Quals. So Los is the top dog there for me. I heard Los might be IGLing now. I'm not sure what the truth is behind that. Valiant used to be IGLing. I think Waldo and Corsac are pretty close in terms of skill. Waldo's always super consistent, kind of got that support player like tag on him, but I always like Waldo and how he performs. I think least valuable, honestly, on that team as of late is probably Valiant. Kind of can see how he's playing, very predictable with his raps and his little snake plays. I just don't think he adds a ton of value to that team recently compared to like Los. So I'm definitely gonna go Valiant for worst player on the Rumblers, which is unfortunate. That's 2019 USA Valiant, Optic Valiant. I just don't think he's up to par with the rest of those boys recently. Next up, we have 300. 300 is a tough one because I fucking hate how they play in general. They're super fucking annoying in things they do, in scrims, out of scrims, in general. They just seem lost, but somehow found their way into PCS 6. 300 is Extreme, Neff, Boxic, and Richie. This one's not too tough. I think Richie and Neff are the mechanical hard carries of most fights in most games. Neff's always impressed me mechanically for sure, and Richie's been playing pretty well. Now, Extreme is definitely a bit better than Vox, but Vox is the IGL, I think, so it's tough to choose between the two. But based on how fucking dumb 300's been playing, and a lot of their camps or just awkward plays and how they're playing in the zones on certain games, I got to go with worst player as Vox, because if you're leading that team, you're clearly leading them nowhere right now. Like you gotta change some shit up. I'm gonna be honest, but that's just my opinion. So that's what we're here for, right? So Voxic right now is the worst player on 300 for me. All right, next up we have Newt. Now Newt is kind of similar to Dodge and Rumblers and teams like that. So they're not overly great, but they're in PCS, right? They've been making it consistently to events. So let's talk about them. We got Senix, Hala Senpai, Leda, and Lampalot. Now this team, as individuals, isn't overly impressive, but as a unit, they've been playing pretty well. Senix hasn't impressed me recently. I haven't heard of Senix before this, like last few months, but I know he's a pretty decent EU player. He jumped in. He's been looking pretty well, so he's one of the better players on Newt for me. And then I've liked Newt's playstyle and how they played some zones. So Senix and Lamp's the IGL. Senix and Lamp will be the top two for me. So it comes between Hollow Senpai and Leda. Now I think Leda is obviously more experienced, and I think he is a little too momentum driven. I think when he's on fire and he's feeling it, he's you don't want to run into Leda because sometimes he'll just roll you. But I think Hollow Senpai is more consistent, and I think he doesn't rely on momentum as much. And for that, I think Leda is probably the worst player right now on Newt. I don't think he finds that spark enough for his momentum, and I think he's just the worst player on Newt right now. So, all right, in our final team out of North America, we have Dodge, the Dodge Boys. They've been playing decent recently. They probably think they're playing better than they are. But we got Ethan, Cherry, Hikerman, and Big Finna. This one's kind of tough because the roster's pretty even. I think Ethan's hands down the best player right now on that team. It's hard to take anything away from Finna because he's IGLing that team in some really great spots. So I'm not going to put Finna there. So it's basically between Cherry and Hikerman. Cherry's been around forever, so he's got the experience, and he's a big veteran here. Hikerman hasn't been around too long. I mean, obviously he's been around in the PCS era. I think I'm gonna have to go with Cherry as the worst, which is hard to do because I really like Cherry. But I think Hikerman has a higher ceiling right now, and he's got more to learn and improve on. And I just would like to see more numbers out of Cherry. He's a big veteran. I want to see him step up, and I want to see him top fragging for that team. I don't want to see him bottom fragging or kind of falling behind. I'm hoping for that out of Cherry, but I think recently he's been the worst player for that team. Alrighty, I almost forgot one, and that would be my team, Shoot to Kill. Now everybody said a cop-out answer would be myself, but I think I'm the least viable or the worst player on my team. But since I can't take the cop-out answer, I have to break it down between Luke, Alo, or Penta. Now I think Luke is probably one of the most valuable players to have on anybody's team. I think he could play on basically any roster in the world if they wanted him on it. So it's between Alo and Penta, which is tough. I give the edge to Alo for sure as being a better player, both for his mental and his drive to improve. I think he's a little bit higher than Penta's, but it's not insane. I think they're both really close, but I think Alo's a bit better than Penta. So I think Penta, other than myself, would be the worst player on Shoot to Kill right now. Love you, Penta. Now, I usually don't do too much EU content, but it's been requested, and I should do it more, so I'm going to throw in some. Now, I don't want to go too in-depth in EU, so I'm just going to name some of the favorite teams. So let's jump right into it. And we're going to start with the Northern Lights boys, which is Lou, Perfectus, Spyro, and Batulins, of course. Batulins, IGL, Nuts. I don't think he's anywhere near the bottom. Obviously, this is kind of like the top dogs of NA, where it's like the whole team is so fucking stacked that it's hard to choose a worst player, like the worst player. But for me, I think Batulins, Lou, Spyro, and Perfectix. I think Perfectix is probably the worst. I think Spyro's like fucking Russian Alo. He's fucking nuts, especially close range. It's insane. Lou's got insane long range. He's like one of the he bolts DMRs. Beautiful long range from Lou. I think Perfectix is probably not even the weak link, but the worst player. Like, doesn't mean you're bad if you're the worst player, but I think he's the worst player on that team, technically speaking. And next up, we have Navi, which is also fucking hard to do. It's Alia, Melman, Quizzy, and XMPL. Jesus, best player. I forgot the best player. I think XMPL is the best player, in my opinion. Alia, Melman, and Quizzy. It's rough because they all seem like the same players almost. Like, I don't know enough about Navi to have a decent opinion, but I'm gonna give you one anyways. I think Melman might be the worst. Now, I'm not sure how that is statistically. I don't know enough about the team at all. I don't watch any of their streams. I don't really watch a ton of their scrims or anything. I just watch live games. And it's honestly just a dog shit opinion for the most part on Navi. I'm just gonna say Melman because I feel like it. So, sorry, Melman. Good luck. All right, next up we're gonna do heroic, which is Corexy, Beamy, T-Bone, Page. Another rough one because I'm not super entwined in how they work. I can just see from the outside in. Corexy, I think, might be the best player on the team, but it's hard to tell. Um, they're all so fucking good. I'll say this about them. Before Heroic kind of had the PGC run and things like that, and a little bit before, I forgot T-Bone played still, to be honest. And then he showed up at PGC, showed up big time. He was like top fragging some of the weeks. He was doing really well. So hats off to you, T-Bone, if you're watching. For some reason, I literally forgot about you, and then you came back and just started shitting on people. So it's good shit. I always see Beamy get memed a lot from like James and the boys, but I think Beamy's pretty solid. Paige is also so fucking good. I'm just gonna embrace the meme and say Beamy's fucking awful, even though he's not. Beamy, you're the worst player on your team. You got to play better. Get it together. You're dog shit. You know what I mean? We'll jump over to Ents really quick. Tixu, Squeaky, Rustamar, and Nookie now. I think is the fourth. So, this is pretty tough because Ents has been, that old roster with Diggory for such a long time. It's hard to see the new dynamic work, and they struggled a lot in the early stages of the last UL event. So that was unfortunate, but I think Tixu's really good. I really like Tixu. Rustamar has, for some reason, always been a favorite of mine in terms of fragging, his mechanics. So it's between Nuki and Squeaky, and I thought Squeaky was the IGL. I was pretty sure he is, and I always used to despise but also love how Ents plays into their edge zones. So for now, I'm gonna go Nuki, but Squeaky's on the edge of being the worst. But I think right now it's Nuki. The last two, we have the two big dogs. We have FaZe and Liquid left. I'm gonna do FaZe first. FaZe is Diggory, Fex, Gustav, and 8C. Now, I feel like I'm picking on the new guys, but I feel like the worst player right now is Diggory. To be honest, outside looking in, I didn't understand the pickup a whole ton. Like, obviously Diggory's been a staple of the tier 1 scene for NEU for a while with Ents, but he hasn't overly impressed me. Like, I didn't even think he was the best player on Ents for the longest time. Maybe that's what FaZe thought they needed. Maybe it isn't, whatever. But it just, their play with him hasn't impressed me much. It's not like he's made a huge impact from what I've seen. And the way I look at the rest of those boys is the value they have seems pretty high to me. Like 8C's one of like the more supportive players with a lot of close range potential, really clutching up a lot of fights. Fex is fucking animal. Gustav has always been like one of the more cerebral players in my mind and just really nuts with overall gameplay. And I have no great impressions from Diggory personally. So I think Diggory's the worst on FaZe, and it's not that close, to be honest. All right, and then for the last one, we have Team Liquid, obviously. Liquid is Vard, Mexi, Clib, and James. Absolutely insanely stacked roster. It's hard for me to do, but again, I feel like I'm bullying the new guy. And I think Vard's probably the worst, which is super rough to say because I think Vard is insane. But that roster seems so stacked to me on paper. I feel like they should be winning events. Like Vard replacing Ibby was like, holy fuck, Ibby's off Liquid, but they got Vard. Like Vard's insane. And yeah, I think they should be winning events. I think James has that big dick. I'm gonna run the lobby fucking energy, just running around doing whatever the fuck he wants. It seems like a lot of the times. Clib has impressed me immensely since before joining Liquid and since joining Liquid. He's been huge for them in a lot of ways. And then the cold as ice Mexi, I love watching him in rough situations to where he has to clutch up. Mexi's one of my favorite players to kind of just watch when I'm just being a fan of the game. So it's hard to say, but I think Vard's probably the worst right now. I think that's it that I'm going to go over for teams right now. If you want me to talk about other teams in the future, you can let me know. That's fine. I'll try and throw them in some random new videos. But for now, I think the players that I mentioned are the worst players on your favorite teams. I'm sure I'm going to get some hate for these here and there, whatever. But it is what it is. Fuck you. I'm sure I'm not going to get any votes from any Americas players now because I just called out almost every player I named was probably, I think they were almost all American. So Have fun at Nations, Relo, HWin, whatever IGL goes. You know what I mean? Have a good one. That's the end of Brutally Honest. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you watching.